Prime Minister, sometime in the next 9 months, you'll face the electorate for the first time as leader of your party. What makes you a winner?
Delivering for the British people. You know, I got this job. We'd been through a lot as a country. We'd had the pandemic, and just as we were recovering from the pandemic, the war in Ukraine drove up everyone's energy bills, grappling with inflation, and it was a really tough time for everyone. But I'm determined to make sure that people feel when the election comes that the future is better, that we have turned a corner. And I think at the start of this year, you can see that that is beginning to happen. Inflation has fallen from 11% to just over 3% the other week. Taxes are being cut by £900 for an average worker, kicking into people's...
You'd think, right, they've set up all of this money, they've got these high-quality lenses for their cameras to film this important Sunday morning primetime interview with the literal Prime Minister of this country, and the sound quality is so leftist audio, it sounds like Sunak is speaking from inside a shipping container. Why spend all of this money to get this high-quality setup and then have this level of leftist audio? What the hell are you doing, Sky News?
Pay slips next week, energy bills are falling, and we can get a sense that the future is going to be brighter for people and their families. They can have that peace of mind and that confidence, and that's what I've worked incredibly hard to deliver.
You might have that sense, but for the last year, you've been 20 point adrift in every single poll. You may be the only person in Britain who thinks that you're delivering. What will make you a winner this Thursday at local elections and in the general election?
Local elections are always difficult for incumbent parties, but actually I think this is a chance to focus on what the reality of Labour in power actually means. Look at...
It's very interesting again, the first thing he's asked here, right, is people don't like what you're doing. People are very upset with you, or grumpy as Chris Philp put it earlier. How can you possibly look towards winning anything in the next local elections when you're predicted to lose so much? And his first instance here, just like Susan Hall in the debates we watched with Sadiq Khan, the first thing that he says is, well, the problem with Labour is, because he knows that he actually has nothing to stand on. At least for once, these essentially kind of tacitly admitting that they've not succeeded on anything. Like, people's living standards still suck. All of the problems that his own voter base care about, he's not solved. Boats still arriving. Net migration still high. He's abandoned the centre ground and also people who would support him as well on their other issues, their little pet projects, their pet issues. All of that's been abandoned. There's nobody left to vote for him, and he's got nothing to stand on. So his only thing is, well, Labour are bad. Well, yeah, Labour may be bad, but are they worse than the people who've led to the biggest drop in living standards since the Napoleonic Wars?
Birmingham, where Labour have bankrupted the local...
Labour. They're worried about you
well,
and your delivery point, your point of delivery.
Elections are a choice, right? And we've got a choice in the West Midlands. Labour have bankrupted the largest local authority in Europe, and people in Birmingham are...
You cut council budgets by 40%. You did that, Rishi. Or I guess David Cameron did that. But the Conservative Party were the ones responsible for reducing council budgets by 40%. Essentially telling them, you're on your own, make some sound investments, which is basically a way of saying, have some autonomy that you can then use for us to force you to sell things off later on down the line when you don't raise those funds through bespoke means, shall we say. And then you then impugn them for failing. It's almost like this was always the project. It was always the plan, and they hate local authorities.
Are paying the price with a council tax increase of 21%. And in contrast, you've got Andy Street, fantastic mayor, delivering housing in the right places, attracting investment for people. And I think that's the contrast. Teesside is another good example. You've got Ben Houchen delivering levelling up in action, saving the airport, attracting the Treasury campus to Darlington, investing in high streets and town centres, or in London, which is the one place in the country pretty much.
What? So he's doing town centre communism, is he? He's doing council communism by taking public money and investing in public services. Is that what that is that he's been doing there? Sounds pretty left-wing to me, Rishi. But even then, Ben Houchen is the one who had the definitely not incredibly dodgy deal over Teesworks. Like, how can you trust that guy? I mean, they think that you can't even trust your party so much that people like Andy Street and Ben Houchen aren't even running as Conservatives. They're on the Conservative ballot, but they're campaigning as individuals because your party is so toxic.
much, when knife crime is increasing, everywhere else is going down on average. It's the one place where the Labour Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has not met his police recruitment targets while we've delivered 20,000 more police officers. So that's the choice at those elections, Trevor, and that people will have a chance, obviously, to express their view.
I've let you make that point, but neither Ben Houchin nor Andrew Street would say right now that they're absolutely safe. But let's talk about...
I'm not saying, I said elections for incumbent governments are always difficult midterm, but I think the local elections do give us a chance to talk about what the reality of Labour in power means, whether it's rising crime in London, rising council tax in Birmingham.
Let's talk about the reality of Conservatives in power. This week you...
Also, it's incredible for him to talk about rising council tax in Birmingham when his Westminster government have presided over the highest tax burden for 70 years. Like, that's your doing. Trying to impugn other people for rising taxes, again, which the people of Birmingham voted for in their plebiscite. They decided themselves to raise taxes on themselves when you were elected on a position of not raising taxes and then did it anyway.
You announced that you'd spend £75 billion on defence, put the country on war footing. That's money that could have been spent on hospitals and schools, isn't it? You've made a choice.
I have made a choice, and I've made a choice because, whether we like it or not, the world that we're living in is more dangerous. There's an axis of authoritarian states with different values to ours, acting in a way that is more assertive and in a way that's more coordinated. Iran, Russia, North Korea, China, and that is damaging to our country, to our values, to our interests. So the right thing for me to do as Prime Minister, given that security of our people is my first responsibility, is to ensure that we invest to keep the country safe. And that's why I've announced the biggest strengthening of our national defence in a generation. You're right, we're taking defence spending up to 2.5% of GDP.
Does anyone have any polling on this? On people's support for funding defence rather than funding the NHS or funding schools? Again, 2.3 to 2.5%. We're already over our NATO target. Again, I've talked a lot about the kind of saber rattling that's been going on, the manufactured consent, getting people on trying to pretend there's some kind of ground war happening with Russia in the next 10 years. That's never happening. Look, there's no chance of that happening whatsoever. But, we've got to raise money on defence spending. And then weeks later, after getting all these defence experts talk about how vulnerable and exposed the UK is to a land invasion that's never happening, suddenly the Tories are all in like, we found the magic money tree to spend on defence. Shame about the NHS and schools, though.
And that will mean that we've got the investments we need to keep our country safe. And that's why when I stood alongside the NATO Secretary General, when I announced this, and he praised the UK's leadership. We lead by example on the world stage, and that's how we will keep everyone safe.
Here's the thing, though, Prime Minister. This sum's going to be spent over 6 years. You've just outlined the scale of the challenge that you face. Nobody can argue about that. But some experts say that this doesn't even really, in fact, amount to much more than £20 billion. Even if it is £75 billion over 6 years, it's not that much. This is just an attempt to create a dividing line with Labour, isn't it?
It's the biggest strengthening of our national defence in a generation. You look at any of the military experts, any of the former defence secretaries, or indeed the NATO Secretary General or world leaders from elsewhere have all praised.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I can't believe that the NATO Secretary General is praising us incinerating more of our public money on defence spending that we're never going to use. I'm sure the NATO Secretary General, the kind of people who helped us into ridiculous incursions in places like Libya, I'm sure that they have a genuinely vested interest in ensuring good quality domestic policy in our country and are not indeed saber-rattling warlords looking for more money to get filtered into the arms industry that they're there to represent.
The UK's leadership. Now, we have always led. When 2014, we had a NATO summit in the UK where allies pledged to spend 2% of their GDP on defence. We are one of the 4 countries that met that pledge, and we've met it for a decade. But unfortunately now, the environment is more dangerous, and I think this represents a turning point for security, which is why we set a new baseline of 2.5%. The UK is again leading by example, will be the biggest defence spender in Europe, second biggest in NATO.
True! More army communism. That's what that is, right? When you spend public money, that's army communism that they're doing. So we're never going to get away from this joke now. It's going to happen forever. We will never forget the broadband communism moment. But again, it's so funny how the Tories we will happily plant the magic money tree and throw money at munitions and bombs and all of the stuff that we need for this defence that we're never going to use because we have no risk of a ground invasion, despite people telling us that we are at risk, but we're not. But also say there's no money for schools, All of the concrete that we've got to replace, I'm sorry, there's just no money. We're going to cut back from 400 school retrofits to only 50. That's something that he did as Chancellor. Yet we're happy to just throw new amounts of money at defence spending. Oh, and it happens to be in an election year. What a surprise. What a surprise. It's in an election year, isn't it, chat? What a turnout for the books. But I don't think it will even cut through to the public. Like, what does defence spending mean to people who can't put food on the table? It's in the same way they talk about like the Rwanda plan. Like, sure, a small number of people are going to be really happy with it, even if they support it broadly outside of that. But that's going to mean very little to them if they can't put food on the table.
Behind the US. And crucially though, Trevor, the important point here is this is what is required to keep the country safe. It is a generational investment in our security and indeed, we're here in this incredible plant, in our prosperity, because the defence industry supports hundreds of thousands of jobs across the UK, and that investment will also come back to creating and supporting jobs here.
Okay.
But look, crucially, the question is
I
here...
get your point, but...
No, but this is, the question is, there's a choice. You talked about elections. Right?
No,
we
I
think
know you're
that...
going to tell me the choice between you and Labour. We get that.
Yeah, there was also a choice between defence spending and school spending, but you decided that an increase in the amount that we spend on defence technology we're not going to use is far more important than indeed fixing the roofs of the schools that might collapse on children's heads. I don't know about anybody else. It seems like a pretty warped priority to me.
This is the country's security. We have made a choice. I think it's the important and right choice for our country. The Labour Party have not matched that.
All right, I want
pledge.
to talk to you
and
about,
that is the choice for the country, is if you think that the world is more dangerous and we do have to invest, there's only one party that is going to deliver that.
I want to ask you about your claim about delivery. Let's turn to your flagship policy, Rwanda.
When you say that the Labour aren't going to deliver it, they've said they're going to grow the economy. Not said how, but they're going to do it apparently. So, yeah, where are you going to be when nominal spending is higher because of the economy that's grown because they've pressed the red button that says growth on it? He's not thinking 3 steps ahead, is he?
It's what you asked us to judge you by. And I would just want to start this by asking you to be precise about what counts as success. When you say stop the boat, do you mean every small boat or just some small boats?
Well, take a step back. When I got this job...
No, I'd just like you to deal with this. You're a precise guy. I just want to deal with that precise.
I'm very clear. I want to stop the boats. But let's take a step back. When I got this job...
All of them?
Yeah. Illegal migration is wrong. We just saw this week, Trevor, more people tragically died in the Channel. More people died. They tragically lost their lives because they're exploited by criminal gangs.
Wow, sounds like they should have a safe and legal route to be able to get into the UK then. Sounds like you need to break the demand of those gangs by giving people a way to cross that means they don't have to use irregular means to get here. Wouldn't that be a really weird way to solve the problem?
Do you think any life lost is acceptable? I don't.
That's not...
No, I don't. And I don't think anyone
Okay, if you don't think it's acceptable, then why are you causing it by not having safe and legal routes?
We are going to agree about all of that, but you're not answering the actual question I asked you, which is, what is success? Is it zero small boats or just a smaller number?
Well, success is stopping the boats. We already did deliver a smaller number last year.
God, just answer the question.
All boats.
We did deliver a smaller number last year. So, if you remember, before I got this job, the number of boats had literally quadrupled in a few years. They had gone up and up and up. I got this job. We worked hard at it. And as a result, last year, you saw the numbers go down already. We already reduced the number of boats.
I hate Rishi's interview style. He tries to control the narrative with an aggressive tone, but he comes across like a dog barking at a stranger in the house. Literally. Again, this is the reaction of a man who's never been told no in all of the however many years he spent on this planet. Never been told no, was never been told no by his middle-class parents, was never told no in his posh little boarding school education at Winchester, and was never told no at Goldman Sachs. He's never been told no in his entirety of his life, and he's suddenly being faced with even a rudimentary level of scrutiny from somebody who basically agrees with him on most policy, which is Trevor Phillips. And he's just like going, I can't believe asking me questions. He did the same with Laura Koonsberg when we watched him before. He looked like genuinely offended that anything that he was doing was being held to any amount of scrutiny. Real small man syndrome.
By 36% last year.
Okay, you're throwing numbers at me, but let me put one back to you. There's over 6,000 this quarter, which is more than 25% up on the same quarter last year.
Yeah, and as I said this week, almost the entirety of that increase comes from one country, Vietnam. Because last year we dealt with the problem
I
that
know.
was
Tom.
illegal migrants from Albania. We returned thousands. We saw the numbers drop. That shows you that deterrence works. And we will be able to do that with Vietnamese as well. And we've had Vietnamese officials here.
Except the Albania thing was an actual deterrent because it was a returns agreement that affected every single person coming from Albania. The Rwanda scheme is literally 300 people. That's nothing. Even if we put all of the humanitarian concerns, all the moral concerns to one side, concerns I hold very deeply, and we just look at analytically in terms of the mechanics of the procedure, the fact that literally anybody coming here from Albania can immediately get sent back in terms of the returns agreement is not the same as the tens of thousands of other people coming over, of which 1% of them are going to go to Rwanda, maximum. That's not the same thing.
In the UK, we're talking to the Home Office about how we
With respect,
strengthen
Prime Minister,
our migration
You
cooperation.
keep describing the situation to me, but not answering the question about what success means. But let me deal with your point about.
Well, and actually, Trevor, I've been precisely clear about this.
No, you haven't. You didn't answer the fucking question. Stop getting mad at people for telling you that you've not answered when you haven't.
You stood up and you said, I make you this promise. You used the word promise.
Yeah.
Stop the boat.
I do want to stop the boats. I do want to end illegal migration.
Okay,
Yes,
so the number we're looking at is zero. All right.
You're trying to make a kind of political point-scoring point about it. Do you think...
Yeah, exactly. You made a pledge, so stick by it. That's politics. I can't believe someone is talking about politics in an interview with the Prime Minister. I cannot believe someone might bring up political points when discussing a political policy with the Prime Minister of a country. What the hell are you talking about, Rishi? What is this? He's like Blair without the charisma. 100%. Even sounds like Blair. This is literally the Apprentice interview stage. It's just pictures of boats. Literally, this is exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's what was the name of the guy? I forget what it was. Pictures of sailboats. That's exactly what it is. Oh, that is the greatest analogy somebody's made. I really appreciate you. Literally. Just pictures of sailboats. It's just pictures of sailboats. Although it's the pictures of sailboats being talked about by Claude Littner, who's out of shot, from Trevor Phillips. But the answers are being given as if Rishi Sunak is Stuart Baggs. That's who he reminds me of. Or that guy who kept banging on in season 4 about who went to Sandhurst.
You are.
You
But do
keep
you
telling
think
me that
anyone...
You're about delivery, and I'm asking you what it is you're delivering.
What's the... But Trevor,
really-
think about the alternative answer to your question. Is a leader or a party leader or a prime minister sitting here and says, yes, there is a level of illegal migration that I will accept. How can the answer to that question be anything other than no?
Okay,
Illegal migration is wrong. It is unfair. It undermines our sense of fairness.
It's not illegal. It's not illegal to arrive by irregular means and claim asylum. It is irregular. There is nothing illegal about it. That is a rhetorical flourish that you are using to imply these people are breaking a law when they have explicitly followed the convention on declaring asylum. When you arrive via irregular means, you claim asylum, and then either you get accepted and you become a refugee, or your claim gets rejected and then you get returned to origin. That's how asylum seeking works, unless you have a safe and legal route to get here. It's not illegal to do that.
Fairness. People tragically lose their lives, as they did this week in the Channel. Now, there is no amount of that that is acceptable or right. Anyone sitting here should be telling you they are determined, as I am, to do everything they can to end this awful trade.
That's what
I'm determined to do.
Can I just quickly ask you one thing? Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister says...
Well, hang on, on this point, though, because you talk about Rwanda, it is important, right? Look, we did just have an important moment this week, that in spite of all the opposition from the Labour Party, we have passed the Rwanda bill through Parliament, right, in the face of enormous opposition. That's important because the only way to fully solve this problem is to have a deterrent, so that if people come to our country illegally, they're not able to stay and we can return them. Now, that's my view, and that's what I'm delivering.
I'm sorry if I appear to be hurrying you up, but I'm working according to your timetable, which is limited. If we had lots of time, I could let you repeat the answer. But let me just quickly ask you, Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister says that many of the people who are coming across in these boats are finding their way into Ireland. Are we simply exporting the problem now? Is that the deterrent?
Well, my focus is on the United Kingdom.
I mean, if that is true, then I don't think Rishi Sunak cares. I think Rishi Sunak is like, yeah, whatever, somebody else's problem. But that's literally been the right-wing approach to the migration crisis across Europe. Just try and make it somebody else's problem, rather than dealing with the root cause by having DFID better funded, by stopping the continual intervention and meddling in other countries, creating power vacuums that lead to an increase in refugees coming across into Europe. Rather than dealing with the root causes and the structural problems that create the migration crisis, they just try and palm it off on other people. Oh, it's France's problem. Oh, it's Germany's problem. Oh, it's Italy's problem. It's Greece's problem. It's Ireland's problem. Just continually passing the buck around Europe, rather than accepting that we are at least partially to blame for creating the crisis in the first place, and that our collective humanity should allow us to try and find a proper solution that isn't just try and dump them on somebody else.
And securing our borders. But what that comment illustrates is a couple of things. One, that illegal migration is a global challenge, which is why you're seeing multiple countries talk about doing third country partnerships, looking at novel ways to solve this problem, and I believe will follow where the UK has led. But what it also shows, I think, is that the deterrent is, according to your comment, already having an impact, because people are worried about coming here, and that demonstrates exactly what I'm saying. If people come to our country illegally but know that they won't be able to stay, they're much less likely to come, and that's why.
And they'll just go to another country again. We're just passing the buck on this one. And Ireland have even said they're going to try and shove them back onto our problem anyway. Like, just passing the buck around. Just, you deal with the undesirables.
The Rwanda scheme is so important.
That's success. Let's just talk about the politics of this week. You are going to get a drubbing at the local elections. How many seats do you have to lose before you accept that the people have lost confidence in you, and it's time either for you to stand down or to call a general election?
Well, look, when it comes to a general election, I've been very clear about that multiple times. I said at the beginning of this year.
Then you have. I'm going to ask you about that. Let me ask you about it. You said second half of this year. Second half of this year could be July.
Yeah, and again, I'm not going to say anything more than I've already said. So I've been very clear about that.
We have July.
Again, you're going to try and say you're ruling this in, you're ruling that in. I remember when I was...
I just need to know when to book my holidays. July is possible.
Well, actually, Trevor, it's more important than your holiday or anyone's holiday. I've got a job to do, which is delivering for the country.
I think one of the reasons why these reactions from Sunak seem so offended, right? You seem so offended by it. Because I think when especially you're a Conservative Party MP, you have all of these friends in the lobby. All of the journalists are your friends. They're people who you go to the Spectator Garden Party and share drinks with. And so this is like your mate the next day in the pub coming at you and saying, I really disagree with all of these things. I'm really combative with you as a friend all over these things. Like, why did my friend do this to me? You're supposed to be on our side. Being held to like even an amount of scrutiny, and suddenly he is all aghast and goes into this kind of meltdown where he starts talking over people and being super aggressive, like a really kind of pushy car salesman.
And as we've been talking about, we are delivering when it comes to tackling illegal migration. We're delivering when it comes to investing in our defence.
We can move on.
No, I'm not going to do that, and you're going to try and do this. And I remember you did the same thing when I was Chancellor. Before budgets, you can't put this tax to me and this tax cut and say you're ruling this out, you're ruling that out, and I'd give you this.
Yeah, how dare a journalist want to hold our elected classes to any amount of political scrutiny over policies they are or aren't going to pass? How dare it? It's so whiny, so tetchy. Again, an artifact of somebody who's never been told no.
Same answer every time. Now, look, on this though, we've talked about it.
You're not going to rule out July.
You're going to try and draw whatever conclusion you want from I say. I'm going to always say the same thing. You should just listen to what I've said, the same thing I've said all year. But the point is, there's a choice when it comes to the general election. And look, over the past week or so, you're having a very clear sense, the country can have a very clear sense of what that difference is going to look like. I've outlined radical reforms to our welfare system, where we've seen an unacceptable rise in not just the welfare bill, but we are...
They're still doing this. They're still going on primetime TV and saying, yeah, we're going to get rid of sick notes from GPs and subcontract it out to G4S to deliberately try and reduce the numbers of people who should be legitimately being declared as not fit for work by medical professionals. And everybody has hated this. Like, even people who usually would like this have hated this. Because most people, even those who work jobs, know that having a GP write your sick note is important. And I guess some people who previously wouldn't have been hit by these kind of draconian policies feel like they might actually get hit by it in future, and they've turned against it. Like, the idea they're running on this as being a good thing, rather than a preposterous thing that nobody in their right mind would propose, just shows you how out of touch these people are with people who work real jobs. Because again, this guy's only real job has been pushing numbers around at Goldman Sachs. What the hell does he know about being sick at work and it actually being a toll on what you have to do or don't do?
We are wasting the potential of a generation of people, so we need to reform our welfare system to support people into work, make sure the system is not being exploited. I've announced a massive increase in defence spending because that's what's necessary to keep our country safe. We've passed our Rwanda bill through Parliament because I believe in stopping the boats, and next week everyone in work is going to see in their paychecks a tax cut worth £900. Now,
No, that's not what they're going to see in their paychecks. That's what they will be worth over the course of the year. People don't get paid yearly, Rishi. And on top of that, taxes are still going up because of fiscal drag. The only people who are actually seeing a reduction in their taxation is quite a small bracket of middle income earners. Everybody outside of that is actually seeing like a higher tax burden because of fiscal drag. So that's just a straight up lie, a nonsense that he's perpetuating here. Again, I'm not sure Trevor Phillips will actually call that out. I find it very unlikely that he will. But it's just nonsense. It's complete nonsense. If anything, what we actually need is wage rises, which will mean not trying to kneecap the bargaining power of wages by increasing the number of people who are being marked as unemployed, by moving them out of being too sick to work and put them into competing for the job market, which will bring wages down.
that's what I'm getting on and delivering. That is the substance
right.
of what this government is about and what it's going to do in the future. And when the election comes, there'll be a clear choice. Because the Labour Party has tried to frustrate our Rwanda bill because they don't believe in stopping the boats. Their economic plan...
No one cares. No one cares. We can't afford to live because of the cost of living crisis. No one cares. And the fact that, again, these people think that the broad political savour of the Conservative Party will be passing the Rwanda bill shows you how out of touch they are from everybody who's got higher mortgage rates, higher cost of living, higher energy bills, wages that haven't been keeping up with all of this increase in prices, looking at their grocery bill and seeing how much it's increased over the last 2 years. And they think, oh, Rwanda plan, our political saviour, we're going to come right back. Oh, Labour Party have no plan. People hate you. They're disgusted with you. It's so out of touch for this millionaire, the richest Prime Minister ever, trying to think that the problems here are people who are too sick to work and the fact that there are small boats happening rather than broad-scale drops in living standards. Again, the biggest since the Napoleonic Wars, chat.
And will put people's taxes up. They haven't said that they will invest more in our defence.
Prime Minister, we've agreed that
and they certainly don't agree with reforming our welfare system to support people into work.
That election could come in July. Let's talk about what you will...
They literally do. They literally said that they support the same thing. Not necessarily the same way, like the weird removal of sick note stuff, but Jonathan Ashworth, when he was the Secretary of State shadow for the DWP, was explicit in saying they were keeping universal credit and not getting rid of sanctions.
Be putting to people, or how, the mood of the people. Sky's done an exclusive poll this week, and what it demonstrates is that of the people who voted Conservative in 2019, something like 2/3 say they cannot believe the promises that you, Prime Minister, Conservative Prime Minister, give. Isn't that humiliating that your own voters no longer trust you?
No, because it's been a very difficult time for the country, and of course I know that people are frustrated. Right? Think of all the things we've already spoken about. No, I think I can completely. I actually do think, because I'm out and about every week talking to lots of people myself, and of course there's been a sense of frustration about the last few years. Everything we've been through as a country hasn't been easy for anybody, but I am.
You are a liar.
COVID in Ukraine, anybody? Anybody want to put a bet on him talking about how it's nothing to do with him? It's all the fault of COVID in Ukraine and nothing to do with him specifically. He is completely blameless in all of this. He's just a small bean. A very, very small bean indeed.
confident that we have turned a corner, and you can see that most clearly in the economy. When I got this job, inflation was at
Again, how out of touch do you have to be? What corner? When are my energy bills going to be affordable again, Rishi? When is the NHS not going to be a pile of shit that you've destroyed? When are our schools going to stop collapsing because of crappy concrete? When are we going to have wages that accurately reflect the cost of living after the biggest drop in living standards since the Napoleonic Wars? How out of touch did this millionaire miniature individual have to be to continue with this nonsense that the economy has turned a corner after we've just gone into recession? Look, I'm losing my mind here, chat. Honestly losing my mind here.
11%. Right? Because of our plan, and that plan is working, in the last set of numbers, inflation has fallen to 3.2%.
Again, he can apparently take credit for inflation falling, but refuses to take credit for it going up and just blames COVID in Ukraine. When, to be fair, those are the reasons inflation went up. They're also the reasons inflation went down as well. Because the prices increased for input costs, that was pushed through the rest of the economy, and therefore, now that that's stopped, inflation has gone down, because inflation is just the rate at which prices are rising rather than whether prices are high or not. But wages haven't gone up enough over a long enough period to reach the point in terms of consumptive power of people in the country to what the new prices are as opposed to what they were previously. So people are still poor in relation to real terms prices. But inflation coming down is nothing to do with you. You've done nothing to bring inflation down, Rishi. You're lying.
Energy bills are falling by hundreds of pounds. Wages have been rising for several months in a row. The economy is growing, and next week, in everyone's paycheck, they're
We're in recession, Rishi.
seeing a tax cut worth on average £900
Let's talk
over
about
the year.
let's talk
And I
about-
think that is signs of progress, and that will
Let's-
make a difference to people.
Let's talk about something that was important. When you arrived as Prime Minister, having been Chancellor, your ratings, personal ratings, were 30 points ahead of your party. Today, you are down where your party is, in really massively negative territory. Do you feel disappointed that the Conservative Party has dragged you down? It's ruining your reputation.
No, I don't. Again, it's probably like the fifth,
Well, the behaviour of some of your colleagues.
fourth or fifth question you've asked, where you've talked about polls and politics. And you know what? I tell you what I do every day.
Yeah, I can't believe interviewing the Prime Minister talking about politics.
I get up and I work hard to deliver for the country on the things that they care about. And I actually, you know what? I'm not just.
I can't not laugh. I can't not laugh at him just
You
literally
are a
saying.
liar.
Literally kind of saying, I get up and I work really hard. You can't say I'm not working hard. That's so mean. Big meanie journalists, despite the fact that all of the reasonable indicators about whether the country are doing well are all in the doldrums. I'm trying my best. Why are you being so mean to me?
Distracted
I've asked
or
you about
focused
politics.
on
I've asked you
polls.
about policy.
No,
But
but I'm
you're-
saying, like,
Yeah,
this is just.
polls are an accurate representation of how much people hate you. They hate your guts. They absolutely despise you. Across the political spectrum.
Just a big difference.
But you're
I'm
asking
focused on the
people to
substance
vote
of what
for
I can
you
deliver for
and
the
your
country.
colleagues this week.
Yeah.
You've got to deal with that point. And I'm really just asking you.
And I'm very
you
happy to talk
preside
about
over
that,
a
Trevor.
party
Right. So
that
let's
has
talk about. You said,
dragged you down.
but again, let's talk about this week, right? But the substance of what's going to happen this week is in the West Midlands. There's a choice. The Labour Party have bankrupted Birmingham, the largest local authority in Europe, and
Yeah.
put up council tax by
Sorry,
21%.
Prime Minister, you have told me that already. I got that.
But
I got that point.
you this is my point. That's the substance.
Yeah, even policy exchange fellow Trevor Phillips thinks he's an idiot. Even the guy who forwarded a report about essentially how Islamophobia wasn't real. Even Trevor Phillips, that guy, is thinking that Rishi Sunak is an idiot. UK politics.
Of what's happening this week. Not some poll about this or a poll about that or who says
Right.
this. The substance is there's a council tax rise of 21% of everyone in Birmingham. Andy Street is delivering for people. In Teesside, Ben Houchin has delivered levelling up in action, saving the airport,
With respect-
attracting government jobs, investing in high streets and town
With-
centres.
with-
You know, that is the reality. In London, crime is
With
going
respect,
up when
Prime
it's going
Minister.
down everywhere else. That's the
With-
substance
with
of what these
respect, you've been
elections
through all of
about.
that.
Not about this poll or who said what about this person.
Well, who said what about this person? What it seems to me is that you're quite reluctant to talk about the most important person here, which is you. I spoke to a leading Conservative, I won't tell you where they are in Parliament, but a supporter of yours, somebody who likes you, who has spoken out for you and so on. And what that individual said is this: he wished that you had stayed doing the job as Chancellor, and that you would be remembered as a brilliant Chancellor rather than the Prime Minister who took the Tories into the wilderness. If you could turn the clock back, would you take his advice?
No, I made my reasons for that clear at the time, but I'm proud of the record that I have as Chancellor.
I mean, again, how out of touch would you have to be proud of the absolute mess that you've created? He was also a terrible Chancellor as well. The only reason why any of the good policies got passed is because he was railroaded into doing so by Boris Johnson, who cared more about being liked than being an austere neoliberal ideologue. The only reason why Rishi Sunak was liked about anything, he was pushed into COVID furlough. Eat Out helped out, complete disaster. That was one of his policies. He's just been a terrible politician all round forever.
And that's where people got to know me. I became Chancellor. 3 weeks later, we got hit with a hopefully once-in-a-century pandemic, and people saw what I could do for this country. I stepped up to get the country through a very difficult time, protected 10 million jobs in the process, and ensured that we had the fastest economic recovery out of the pandemic out of any major European economy. So yes, that is a record that of course I'm proud of, and I'm bringing exactly that same set of values and exactly that same set of dedication to the job that I have now. And that's why on the priorities that people care about, whether it's bringing inflation down, growing the economy, reducing our debt, cutting waiting lists, which we haven't talked about, which are now down.
The debt is projected to increase. You've literally borrowed more than you said that you would. Not that I care. That was your pledge, which you've broken. You've not stopped the boats. They've continued over time. Inflation has come down, but that was nothing to do with you. The NHS waiting list is still hilariously long, damningly long. You failed at everything. All of the public's priorities have been completely abandoned by you.
Over the last 5 months, or indeed stopping the boats with my determination to get the Rwanda scheme going.
Record number from September.
So these are all the things that I'm delivering and focused on, right? So that's what I'm all about. That's the substance of what we're doing. And after a difficult few years, we have turned a corner and things are pointing in the right direction. And I am absolutely committed and energised to deliver for this country in this job.
Last question, Prime Minister. If you lose, there will be no regrets then?
Again, you're focused on all this personality stuff. I'm focused on delivering for the country.
I'm focused on you.
And what I'm doing is getting up every single day and working my hardest to deliver for people on the things that matter to them and matter to me. And as you've seen over just the past week or two, that's what we're doing. Significant reforms to our welfare system to support people into work, because that's good for them, because there's dignity and purpose and hope in work, and the current
Bite smashed fry. Isn't it right, chat?
current system is simply financially unsustainable, and that's not fair.
I tell you what, I have no love for the Labour Party. I have no love for it at all. But watching this man get publicly humiliated, worse than any dominatrix could ever inflict on anybody consensually, on a global stage when the election gets called, is going to be the sweetest thing. I will vote for the Green Party. I don't like Labour. It's going to be miserable with them doing nothing in power for 5 years. But watching this tiny little, irritating, awful Prime Minister, the worst Prime Minister we've had since David Cameron, getting humiliated on a global stage at the next election, watching his Conservative Party get completely wiped out, I will at least enjoy that for a couple of moments before the dawning realisation of what's replacing them is going to happen. Honestly, I utterly despise. He's so unlikable. At least Boris Johnson was a prick, but at least he was likeable. This guy is supremely unlikable. Just a really, really, really awful human being.
Massive investment in our defence, because the world we're living in is more uncertain. A landmark piece of legislation to get our Rwanda scheme up and running to stop the boats. A tax cut worth £900 next week in everyone's pay slips. That's what I'm focused on.
Prime Minister, I hope we'll be able to talk more about this after the election.
Me too.
Prick. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.